See? That's not okay. You have to align your flywheel, and I show you how that's done. I insert the timing pin into the engine block. I rotate the crankshaft against the timing pin. And you can see if I would just put my flywheel on, I could be in this position. That would be wrong. That would be right.
Don't screw that up, guys. Yeah, so we're having issues.
Yeah, in our marriage, not in the engine. About straight would be nice, but crooked is also okay. I set it on the lower pulley wheel and I jam it in with a bottle cork here. Rotating this clockwise, go into the next available tooth. You can see there's nicely oil.
Oh my God, look what Christian did while I was gone on a trip with Philip.
You even get comments if you multi-click your torque wrench, okay? So I do it on purpose now. Oh, I always find this the most impressive, okay? Look how nice this engine looks.
Yes.
So in the last episode, we assembled our short block, and this is now all complete. And the next step is really to put the cylinder heads on and do the timing and stuff. The cylinder heads are now from our replacement engine with 145,000 kilometers. What is always a big debate, and I'm getting a lot of comments, is the valves, okay? Do I now basically reseat or regrind the valves? And the basic test I can do there is a vacuum test, okay? This is probably the worst one, and I could not get it to pull a full vacuum. You can see I can't get to 20. And it drops about like this.
Oh my God.
I used that to clean this. In a previous episode, we went through this and she wants me to replace all the valve seals. So that's what we're gonna do. And I'm gonna show you my setup on one valve only, okay? Because it's really stressful. I got my improvement for the lighting conditions in there. And I have this Chinese tool where I have like a custom tip down there which has a bearing installed, see? This one has a bearing installed.
Oh my God.
I push the valve down until the little wedge is exposed, like this. I take the wedge out. There's one. There's the other one. I release the valve spring. Put my tool out of the way. Remove the valve spring and the cap. Now I push the valve out. I do inspect now that the valve seat is nice and clean. Clean it up with Scotch-Brite. Where is the valve stem seal plier?
It should be in there.
You didn't want it in there. So what is that box called?
Pliers we only need once a year.
Okay. But the crankshaft breaks more often than once a year.
The crankshaft's not broken. We
Watch
only
it.
get an engine once a year.
That's it, okay? All I gotta do is pull this out. No?
Now, how are you going to determine if it's one or not?
Oh, look.
What?
There's debris in there. I put some oil back on, put the valve in from underneath. There. Now I gotta put this little sleeve over it to protect the valve stem seal during install. I take a new valve stem seal, verify the spring is there. Like this. And push it down all the way. There. Take the little sleeve back out. Put the spring back in. Tool back on. Compress the valve spring. A little bit of grease here. Take the little wedge. Set that in. Second wedge. There. Now I release the valve spring. Capture the wedges. There. Valve is now installed. I gotta tap them with a hammer and make sure that's on video or we get 150 comments like in the last one. And because I got so many to do, I marked this one. So I gotta do that a total of 24 times. After I got them all back in, I gotta vacuum test them just to be sure that I didn't screw anything up.
Okay.
Well, there are about 3 or 4 valves which have a vacuum leak. So I'm not sure if I can improve this, but I'm gonna do the fire making method from the old Indians to fix that.
Yeah, so we're having issues.
Yeah, in our marriage, not in the engine. This one is good. I use a scraper and I'm gonna scrape off all the rough stuff first, okay? This is basically like a razor blade in here and a scraper I bought in the US. And I let all the dirt drop in these holes where I don't know where it goes, so that I worry about it later. The cleaning is a separate story. I give it a little wash. At a slow RPM, and that's gonna clean up now really nicely.
Oh, wow.
How many wows did you get out of your wife today already? Once I have it clean like this, I go with the scraper and look for the remaining spots, okay? So I go like here. Looks very nice, okay? Do a final cleanup. I use the thinnest shim what I have, 0.05. And I'm gonna check that the cylinder head is not distorted. Stuck. 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 So we got absolutely zero problem with flatness on this one.
So he bought that straight edge, especially for that engine we built. We never used it before, and I wondered what he bought it for.
It's a straight edge, now I remember. That's it. Okay, that's good enough. Cleanest one in the shop, you know, got that out of the bathroom this morning. I'm gonna do a final blow through all oil channels. So we're gonna need these two now next. I got all my parts here laid out and perfectly clean to put the heads back on. There's this little filter here in the corner of the block. Make sure you pull that out and inspect it once. The gasket is from 23. Oh man, what a step. They come pre-lubricated out of the package. I use the torque instruction from L-Ring and it matches the Ford instruction. (20 Newton meter), 40 Newton meter, 80 Newton meter. Now I gotta do 2 times 90 degrees. Second stage 90 degrees. I got the torque wrench set to a not to exceed of 250 Newton meters. In the next step, I'm gonna install the glow plugs. Of course, you can install them before you put the cylinder heads on, but they stick out in the front and you gotta be really careful when you handle the cylinder head. I put on Metaflux out of Switzerland. That is by far the best anti-seize made on this planet. And I put this lightly on the thread and I also put it lightly down here on the seat. They are the old used glow plugs because the new Bosch ones for this engine are quite expensive. Don't use an automatic tool, run them down by hand until they seated. The torque spec is 9 to 12 Newton meters. Because I'm using anti-seize, I'm only using 10 to tighten them down. And done. That's the one from the engine with 135,000. Got here new O-rings for the oil cooler, L-ring. Yeah, they stick out really nice now. Doing that in the vehicle is probably quite challenging. And 11 Newton meters. So I got the oil pump here all nice and clean, and I got the installation sleeve inserted. L-ring actually makes an O-ring seal which comes together with the crankshaft seal all in one package, and it's a little less money. The Gen 2 has here this additional hole. L-ring is OEM quality. And we put this on here. We run down these 2 bolts here on the side. Very lightly. Now we can align the pump. Gotta be like within 0.2 millimeters according to spec. And we run those 2 bolts in. And we run the rest of the bolts in. 11 Newton meters. Done. So installing the crankshaft seal is really easy. The new L-ring comes with an installation sleeve like this. It gets installed completely dry and I scoop it over slowly so the Teflon has a chance to open up and widen here. There we go. Push it home. Now I have an installation tool and it sets it 1 millimeter under flush. Perfect. We also installed 2 new Land Rover housing seals here. 1, good enough. So here we got the sump and these idiots broke this connection here, which is normally either pressed in or molded in. About straight would be nice, but crooked is also okay. Very well. Let's get those chips out completely so Vera doesn't confuse them with bearing chips. Land Rover makes this special clamp here for the oil level sensor. It's not installed as a standard, but it's available as an upgrade, and it makes sure that this connector here does not pop off under heat conditions. So it goes in with a distinct click, and then this piece goes over it and it holds it on. And now the oil sensor goes back in here. Good. Here, crankshaft seal, L-ring. There we go. Done. Mounting the oil sump. I'm using Dirco HT, and this goes on the 4 corners here. Now also put it around the oil pump opening here. Got a new L-ring seal. Make sure it sits in the dowel pins. That goes in here, seats in the gasket. Dowel pin is in. Mounting the crankshaft pulley. First stage is 100 Newton meters. Stage 2 is 300 Newton meters. 90 degrees with no more than 600 Newton meters. That's 400. 400 is enough for me. So we're gonna renew all hydraulic lifters. Cause Ina had them on sale for only $2.99 a piece. There we go. And here are the new ones. Take this little cap off and put in the lifter. And they go in here 24 times. I got the engine 30 degrees past top dead center. There we go. In pairs with the tensioner together. And then they kind of fall in place. There we go. Place these in, got it all looped up, fall in place. So with all the bolts run down, we want to make sure the camshaft end float of the inlet is between 0.1, 0.1 goes in, and 0.15, it's not supposed to go in. So that's good. We can torque them now to 5 Newton meters, and then 11 Newton meters. Okay, so I'm gonna put the last 4 camshaft caps on, and I had problems here with oil leakage before. So I did buy this Loctite 518. This is specified by Ford exactly for this space here. So they specify a 2 to 3 millimeter bead next to this groove. I think that's already good enough. Like this. Goes on here. And they say not to wipe off the excess. So putting on the sealant ring, I'm gonna cover up the groove here with some tape. Got a new L-ring sealant ring here. There we go. This one goes over the tape here. Seat this ring 1 millimeter under flush. Okay, I gotta do this 3 more times. So, German precision. Perfect. There we go. And I want to make sure it's functioning. So the timing belt idlers go in. They are from the Prince Maldcrawl engine and they are about 4 years old. And I got some blue Loctite on them. 48 Newton meters. I gotta replace this O-ring here. There's a new one from Land Rover. And it goes back in place here. And because this is for water, we'll put some silicone grease on here. So the water connection housing. Sometimes I'm being asked if this one should be replaced with an aluminum unit for like a ton of money. And my opinion is no. So just get yourself a new one, even aftermarket, and keep the original one in your car. It's easy to replace, even in the middle of the Simpson Desert. I do use new O-rings, of course. Very well. Yeah, with a new O-ring. One is 80 Newton meters and I want to make sure my camshaft is here. Gonna remain in the floating range. So stage 2 is 80 degrees and a minimum of 100 Newton meters and a maximum of 250. So I got the torque wrench set to 200. I would say that was like 60 degrees, so that's enough for me. So the water pump is the old one from the Prince Maldcrawl engine. We got a new L-ring O-ring here. I would say that's beautiful. Some silicone grease on it here. Oh, that fits good. 80 degrees, but I'm gonna go to 200 Newton meters. So let's put the timing pin back into the engine block. There we go. So the Gen 2 has an M10 tensioner bolt, not an M8, so they kind of cured this problem. So I rotate the crankshaft against the timing pin. This is top dead center here, measured on the top of the cylinder head, and it's 30 degrees. There you go. So we're gonna get the pulley wheel into the correct timing position. Right there. And then this one. Right there. So using a Dayco timing belt, that's OEM. Note that the Gen 2 engine has a timing belt which is 1 millimeter wider than the Gen 1 engine. There we go. I set it on the lower pulley wheel and I jam it in with a bottle cork here. This way it doesn't slip off. Now I gotta set it onto the first pulley wheel by tensioning it here, rotating this clockwise, go into the next available tooth, slip below this one here, rotate this one clockwise, go into the next available tooth, and then set it over the tensioner here. Beautiful. Now I rotate the tensioner until this little emboss piece is in this window here. 45 Newton meters and some Loctite on the bolt. And you can see it's nicely in the center. Pulley wheel bolts to 25 Newton meters. This one comes out. This one also. And we rotate 2 revolutions. That's now the first time with its own timing. There we go. Okay, and crankshaft against it. And make sure timing pins go back in. This one goes in, goes in. Timing is done. So mounting the vacuum pump. Gotta make sure there's sealant here at this corner. Sprocket is aligned and it goes in. Good. So we measure torque to rotate with the complete timing installed and no injectors. That's 25. That's 30. 30 doesn't do it. 35. So 35 Newton meters torque to rotate with everything installed. That's good because specification is 100 Newton meters. This engine is running really easy. So I made a custom fitting here out of aluminum and I'm gonna yank this in and I hope it's not leaking. I know I could have machined a hex head on it, but I had no time. Okay? I got an O-ring in it. The fitting going on here is plastic, so I don't think this will break off. Very well. Now I know this sounds pretty dumb, but I'm gonna fill oil in here because I always wanted to see how that works with these lifters and stuff with oil. And the oil I'm using is the one from the compression test, okay? So this is why it's a little bit black, but it's brand new oil. That should be enough. I forgot to purge the oil pump, so I thought it's a good idea to run it like this and see if it gets oil. There's also oil here on the front and it's dripping out, so that's lubricating the shaft. It looks like it's getting oil here on the chain. It's getting oil here on all the lifters. Now it's actually good that the oil is black, I can see it. Okay, this is all good. And here it's running out. And then over here, same thing, it's running out on the shaft. It's getting oil there. Everything is good here. Wow, this works perfect, man. What a nice design. So I think this test passed. I'm using the Daco belt for the Gen 2 because this belt has the necessary markings on right here and here. The engine is now in the timing position with the pins installed up front. And what I gotta make sure is that this line here is aligned with the center of the pump. This is actually the timing position. Now I got these bolts here still loose, you can see that. And I want to make sure this did not move and this moved instead, and it has still room to go here. 26 Newton meters. So I got the valve covers here. Of course, I cleaned them previously with sodium hydroxide and laundry detergent and a pump. And I agitated this until it was completely clean. I think there is no other way to get those as clean as I got them here. They are all kind of different bolts, so I made me a map of which bolt goes where before I took this apart. Valve cover goes back on and I'm gonna put a good bead of silicone here into these corners. So it's time for the injectors to go back in. I got new Bosch sealing rings. They are the correct ones. You got to make sure that they have these 4 little tabs on them and they 1.5 millimeter in size. Got the injectors here cleaned up and here cleaned up, and I'm gonna put some anti-seize up here because that's where they start to seize. There we go. Now of course you want to check that all your bores are completely clean before you insert your injectors in here. And that's it. So all injectors are in. So the fuel injector rail gets 35 Newton meters. Make sure this is set in a 90-degree angle. Injector leak off. So new L-ring seal goes on here. Got that nice and clean. We pre-torqued them with 20 Newton meters. Now finally torque them to 28 Newton meters. Ah, damn threads are all completely corroded. So we'll put in a new gasket here, turbocharger oil repair line. It's really sweet. 11 Newton meters. Should do it. Ooh, look at that. Hopefully that's not leaking in some way. Good. Click, click. Click, click. And EGR goes back on. And we can close this baby up here. Click, click. Hose goes back on.
Oh my God, look what Christian did while I was gone on a trip with Philip. He even fixed, what do you call that, Christian?
Oh, my new oil connection with
Yeah,
the machine. Luckily, you've been not around when I did that one. And then I put the timing belt on, and after that I watched a video from Simon. And Simon was lecturing that the timing belt has a running direction with an arrow on it. So we'll never know.
We have to take the engine temporarily off the engine stand.
Because we need to install the trigger wheel and the flywheel.
Oh.
Okay. I would have done that later on, but you know, there are always reasons for divorce. So
Yes, and one of the reasons was Christian wanted to install the original trigger wheel, and I made him buy a new OEM one.
the original one was perfectly fine.
Yes, we have replaced twice a trigger wheel. Oh my God, that looks so sketchy.
You know, roll around.
Yes, I know.
There we go. See?
Oh my
That's
God.
perfect.
So our spare parts are getting less and less. And here is a new OEM trigger wheel. So we're not going to test it because it's OEM. And I do trust that all the stripes are there and it's not distorted and it's not going to fall apart like on Fabian's Discovery 3.
Yeah, we don't need to test an OEM up front. So did you bring the new bolts too?
No. Yeah. That's where the trigger wheel goes. So these are the flywheel bolts, UB, they are also OEM.
There are different versions around. The latest number I found was LR035564. 156 euros in Germany. When you install the trigger wheel, most people use this cheap Chinese tool, what you can buy off eBay. This tool bears a lot of problems, okay? First of all, it doesn't have the correct diameter here. I had to remachine ours. When you put this tool on, it also has a lot of play. And it can actually put the trigger wheel into the wrong depth and into the wrong angle. And then you will have a crankshaft position sensor fault at the end. So I recommend to duplicate our gauge tool. The drawing can be downloaded from our Patreon page. Anyhow, the specification for installing the trigger wheel is 110.5 degree plus minus 0.5 degree from the dowel hole to the locating hole in the trigger wheel. And when I put this tool now here on, I can perfectly align my gauge tool to the trigger wheel. I can see what I'm doing. This is the major difference. And then tag this tool here a little bit in place. Okay, look, she got herself a chair. Okay, so I can now see when I put the camera in front of it, I can see now within half a degree if I'm in position and nothing has play here. So with the trigger wheel now seated in position, I can take my insert tool back off and then I have a tool to seat it perfectly into the final position with the correct depth right here. So first I turn the tool around like this and I get it carefully seated here until it's flush. Now I got the trigger wheel mounted flush, and in this position I can verify one more time that I didn't screw up. This hole to this hole. Perfect. Now I got this tool which gives me the correct depth.
You didn't hear. Do it one more time, please.
It's on.
No, please do it one more time.
It's on.
Because you're only hitting on the right side.
Now I got the correct depth installed. So you see, I did this in stages versus when you press this on with this tool, it's more binding up. It's not such a nice insertion. And the tool has play. And it has here the wrong depth, the wrong diameter. Very dangerous. I'm sure there are good tools out there, but we didn't have one and we ended up taking the transmission back out.
It still does not make any sense that there is an arrow on the trigger wheel.
So most people align this hole to this hole, and that's definitely wrong because it's in an offset to this hole, okay? It's actually a little bit on the edge of that hole. It's really important to get this trigger wheel into the right position, or you will be taking the engine back out with your wife.
And guess how we know that? Because we've done that twice. Once because of a faulty aftermarket trigger wheel, and once because the trigger wheel disintegrated.
Which was also an aftermarket. Okay, so the depth is 3.66 millimeter plus minus 0.4. So that was now lucky. Here, the thing is bent out of sheet metal, so it's not that accurate. I got 3.5 here. Now we install the crankshaft position sensor, and I'm using the one out of our Prince Smallcrawl engine because this engine still did start. It was supposed to go in there before installing the turbocharger.
Oh shit. One more part. Remember, there's a difference between OEM quality and OEM spec. So Christian just told me that he bought a new crankshaft sensor.
Yeah.
So we have one at home. Yeah. But he refused to install it now.
Make sure your crankshaft trigger wheel gap is no smaller than 0.5 and no bigger than 1.5. So ours is just shortly above 0.5, so we're good. See here, I took a picture when we took the car apart, which tells me now the connector goes on top of this bracket because it also was ending up below this bracket. But this is the correct way. This goes back in place, like 12 Newton meter. Oh, the engine is... You even get comments if you multi-click your torque wrench, okay? So I do it on purpose now.
I'm wondering when he starts looking for his wrench here.
There is a particular reason. This is not tightened because I don't know the orientation of this clip. Okay, you're supposed to use new flywheel bolts. The flywheel only fits in one position. It looks like an even hole pattern, but it really isn't. So I have to look for the correct position. This is also not it. Now they all line up. What most people do wrong when they install their flywheel is they do not align it correctly to the timing position. The flywheel needs to be aligned, even if you put it into the correct position like I have now. See? That's not okay. You have to align your flywheel, and I show you how that's done. In order to get the flywheel into the correct timing position, I insert the timing pin into the engine block. I rotate the crankshaft against the timing pin. There we go. Now you can see the flywheel hole lining up with that aperture. And you can see if I would just put my flywheel on, I could be in this position. That would be wrong. That would be right.
Don't screw that up, guys. Your engine will not start.
Okay. This slack here is enough to cause problems when you later on change your timing belt and so on. Pin will only go in if your engine is set correctly. And without the timing pin, you can't even get that done. Then it's just guesswork. The timing pin you can download on our Patreon page. The tightening order here is just a cross and then lots of Newton meters. Okay.
And now we to put in lots of torques.
See, my tool here is nice and loose and my timing pin is still in and the crankshaft is against it. So now this is in the correct position and I can torque it. First stage is 50 Newton meters in the correct tightening order. Second stage is 45 degrees, third stage is another 45 degrees. I marked all the bolts for the correct angle. This way, if I go to lunch in the meantime, I won't screw up.
Yeah, you're gonna finish that job before you come to lunch, to eat lunch.
Okay.
So you see, they are all in the same orientation.
And now I can do the final 45 and that gives us 90 and I can nicely align them here. Oh, there is also a maximum torque of 160 Newton meters, so you want to make sure when you reach your 90 degrees that your torque wrench is not clicking, and if it does click, you stop ahead of time. That's usually the case when you use used bolts.
Yeah, which we are not.
I got all of them torqued to 90 degrees. Timing pin comes back out, and over here we remove the timing pin from the engine block. Timing is completely done. Now we can close the timing hole in the engine here permanently. Engine mount bracket goes back on.
Yeah. Torque to 100 Newton meters. Oh, and it's already back on the engine stand. I was up making lunch.
Good.
We have a parts list on our Patreon page. Made in Canada. Never seen anything made in Canada.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, crankshaft pulley wheel goes back on with the old bolts, and of course you checked it for cracks.
So that piece actually costs in Germany 360 euros OEM.
Water pump pulley wheel goes on.
And of course we did not put in a new water pump because it's an easy job for us.
And it's 27. Okay, then this pulley wheel goes on here.
So he needs a 10mm impact socket, that is it.
And done.
You better torque it.
Click, click, click. Gotta mount this line here. Choop.
Yeah.
Here. There.
So of course we had to take off the engine mount again in order to install that line.
So let's see if my self-made fitting fits in here. Very nice. Don't clean your manifold absolute pressure sensor with brake cleaner, okay? Use mass airflow sensor cleaner. That will get it nice and clean, and it will not destroy the membrane on the inside.
I would have blasted it with something.
Okay. Oh yeah. And okay, so the wiring harness goes on, and all you gotta do is throw this on here, and done. And once that bolt is in, everything magically will self-wire itself, and the remaining wires, red's black and plus is minus.
Oh yeah, just remember that.
We are replacing these tie wraps here, see? Because they always rip off. You got one more?
Yes.
See here? You got the old one, and then here's the new one. Really easy to find. Cut this off. And we're gonna do that for the remaining wiring. Camshaft position sensor. If you forget this one, it's really hard to get to. And here.
That was not a nice click. I don't trust that.
Okay, can you stop don't trusting stuff? Here. Are you done pointing at connectors?
Yeah, because the engine's not gonna start. You know? For the EGR coolant pipes. I think it's not so on my Discovery 3.
And we got the EGR pipes back in. Okay, the annoying alternator mounting bracket goes on. There's why this is a pain in the engine. I can't get to this bolt, and that's why I have to remove this little cover here. And that's all blind. So I'll take this one out for a second. So. Good. If I don't plug it in now, forget it. So I don't plug it in. Okay, good, that worked. In, it clicked. So the power steering pump. That was a debacle to find this bracket.
Yes, he was looking for half an hour and he completely forgot that he painted it and it was hanging here on that wire.
I'm allowed to forget something in my age. So I'm gonna put on a brand new tensioner here from Ina Scheffler. Still gotta mount the starter and another pipe. I think I'm gonna end this video right here. We're not gonna drop this engine into the frame right now because I got actually quite a lot of work to do on that frame. This is not gonna fly here in Germany. I got corrosion here and here. Then I got some nasty spots here on the frame. They right now still easy to address. See that? That's not looking nice. But this is solid. So then corners like this is not nice. See right here, I'm gonna take this apart and fix this all up. See that here, I gotta fix that. That's it for this week's video. And at that point, I wanna thank our patrons a lot for their support. And we'll see you next Sunday because, you know, Vera isn't here, so I have to say that now. See you guys later.